Inflation, the invisible machine that helps the elite seize the wealth of the masses. While most people are preoccupied with work, the rising cost of living, or sensational headlines in the media, a silent yet massive game is being played behind the curtain of global finance: the redistribution of wealth. Ironically, this redistribution is anything but fair. It increasingly funnels wealth into the hands of a small group of powerful elites. One of the most effective tools for this agenda is inflation. Inflation is not an accident or a random economic phenomenon. It is a deliberate strategy designed to regulate wealth within society. And the ones who suffer the most are the poor and middle class. Meanwhile, the wealthy continue to grow their fortunes because they understand that inflation is an opportunity to strengthen their financial power. Let's explore the sophisticated mechanisms of inflation and how it quietly transfers wealth from the people to the elite. 1. Inflation. Not an accident, but a strategy. Inflation, at a basic level, can be understood as the devaluation of money. When central banks inject more money into the system without a corresponding increase in goods and services, prices naturally rise, reducing the purchasing power of currency. But in reality, this isn't just a random economic occurrence. It's a strategic move with a clear goal: transferring wealth from the hands of the public to a small group of elites. 1.1. How inflation works. How do prices rise without causing chaos? When governments or central banks issue more money without increasing production, the currency loses value. Consumers start to feel that everything is becoming more expensive, yet this feels like a normal consequence of economic growth. But this is a remarkably subtle strategy. People are dissatisfied, but unsure who is benefiting from these rising prices. Large corporations with vast assets and the ability to invest in value-preserving assets like gold, real estate, and stocks can protect or even grow their wealth as the currency weakens. Smart investors watch their assets appreciate. Meanwhile, the poor and middle class bear the brunt of rising living costs without a proportional increase in income. 1.2. Who really controls inflation? Inflation is not a natural or random event in the economy. Central banks and governments can create money through loose monetary policy, money printing, increasing the money supply. While this causes cost of living pressures for ordinary people and small businesses, large corporations and wealthy investors leverage their existing assets to shield and grow their wealth. Governments may claim they are stimulating the economy during a recession or crisis. But if these measures aren't accompanied by an increase in goods and services, inflation is not a side effect. It becomes a deliberate strategy to redistribute wealth. 1.3. Inflation as a tool for transferring wealth from the poor to the rich. Inflation is essentially a calculated way to transfer wealth from the poor and middle class to the rich. Currency devaluation hits those on fixed incomes the hardest, as their wages don't keep up with rising prices. The poor and middle class typically hold cash and lack the means to invest in inflation-resistant assets like real estate or stocks. When inflation hits, their savings lose value and they spend more on essentials like food, fuel, education, and healthcare. This leaves them with no chance to accumulate wealth. The rich, on the other hand, own appreciating assets. Land, stocks, gold, and other tangible assets become safe havens during inflationary times. As these assets rise in value, the wealthy grow richer, while the rest struggle just to maintain their standard of living. 1.4. Government and inflation. The alliance of power and money. Central banks and governments can use inflation as a tool to maintain political and financial power. They create a monetary system where the population has no alternative but to use government-issued currency. This ensures governments and financial institutions not only control political power, but also dominate the nation's wealth. In this context, inflation becomes a tool to maintain people's dependence on a system that they don't control, because no viable financial alternative exists to protect their wealth from the erosion of currency value. 2. Inflation creates modern-day financial slavery. Inflation doesn't just raise the price of goods. It inflates the costs of housing, education, healthcare, and basic living. As a result, people are forced to take out loans for homes, college, and medical expenses, pay interest to banks for decades, This turns the majority of workers into lifelong debtors. They don't truly own their homes or cars, but are instead making endless payments to financial institutions. They spend their lives working to repay debt, never truly escaping the cycle. This is modern-day financial slavery. 3. COVID-19, the greatest wealth transfer in modern history. The COVID-19 pandemic is a textbook example of how the financial elite exploit crises to massively grow their wealth, while most people fall deeper into poverty and debt. 3.1. Handouts for the people money. Printing for the elites. In the U.S., the government gave individuals $200, $3,000 in stimulus checks. But large financial institutions received hundreds of billions of dollars in bailouts, often at near zero interest. People used their stimulus checks for daily expenses. Meanwhile, investors used ultra-cheap money to buy up real estate, stocks, small companies, and farmland. As asset prices soared post-pandemic, the wealthy made enormous profits, while the public faced skyrocketing inflation and dwindling homeownership opportunities. 3.2. Small businesses died. Corporations took over, lockdowns drove millions of small businesses into bankruptcy. In contrast, giants like Amazon, Walmart, Zoom, and Pfizer not only survived, they thrived with record profits. Many small companies were bought at bargain prices, and capital flows increasingly consolidated into the hands of a few mega corporations. Conclusion. The truth behind inflation. Inflation is not an accident. It is a financial tool that helps the elite maintain control over society's wealth. When people don't understand how this mechanism works, they remain trapped in a world where everything becomes more expensive. Yet financial power remains concentrated in the hands of those who know how to protect their assets from devaluation. This system must change if we hope to build a more equitable economy for everyone. Thank you for reading. If you found this content insightful and thought-provoking, don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss future posts and videos. Share this article with friends and family to raise awareness of these critical issues. Let's explore and transform the financial world together for a fairer and more just future for all.